what are you looking for as far as like the tangibles versus the intangibles? I mean, is there an ideal type of athlete you're looking for, like NBA player, or what do you look for? How do you guys assess that?
Yeah, it's a great question, Matt. Those values can be different from place to place. But I can answer the question in terms of my personal thought process mixed with the organizations that I've been a part of that have the most the most common denominators of having done it well. Of course, it's a blend of of the physical and the other intangibles that you're talking about. No doubt about it, you have to have enough talent in the league that I work in on some level.
Yes.
And you have to have enough for the physical, attributes to have a chance to be here.
Well, welcome to today's interview. It is Matt Phillips, and today I have the privilege of introducing you to Chad Forcier. Chad is a current assistant coach with the Utah Jazz, has an extended career in the NBA, along with college and high school level. And what we talk about today covers a variety of different topics, including what do NBA coaches look for when drafting or trading for a player? Who's going to add the right way to the culture of the team? And it's such an important thing as coaches, as student athletes, to understand the importance of what top-level coaches are looking for. So that, amongst other topics, Chad and I dive deep into today. Now, a little bit about Chad's background. Chad, like I said, has been with the Utah Jazz for a couple of years, but has an extensive career in the National Basketball Association. He actually started his coaching at Lake Washington High School, quickly transitioned to the collegiate level with Oregon State, UCLA, University of Portland, and then made the jump to the NBA. He has worked with a variety of different teams, from the Pistons, Pacers. He spent about 9 years with the San Antonio Spurs under Greg Popovich, Orlando Magic, Memphis, Milwaukee, winning a championship with the team back in 2021, and currently with the Utah Jazz. So without further ado, let me please introduce you to my friend, Utah Jazz assistant coach, Chad Forcier.
Well, Chad, thank you for taking your time today. Great to see you again, and just truly appreciate you taking a little bit of time with me today.
Matt, thanks for having me. It's my pleasure. It's been a long time since I've seen you, and I'm glad we can reconnect.
Has been a long time. Yeah, it was like pre-COVID, right? And having you at the event here in Denver and getting to do an interview before that too. So this is awesome. I'm excited to talk a little more sports today than we did the first time, and athletics and players and the mental game and all these sorts of things. But, I went through your background, from the high school, collegiate, obviously heavy NBA background now with the Utah Jazz. But first question I have for you is, what do you love most about coaching? Like, kind of, why'd you get into it? What do you love most about it?
Yeah, I really, when my coaching journey started, I just wanted to be a high school coach. I really did. And I got to do that for a while. I spent 3 years as a high school varsity assistant and a JV head coach, and I loved that. And the big motivation behind that was I loved the game of basketball first and foremost. I mean, I was just passionate about it. And really, your coaching career starts when your playing talent runs out. So mine ran out really early. I didn't have very much. So anyway, it was a great avenue for me to stay connected and be, close to my favorite sport,
Yes.
in the end. But then the opportunity to just help people's lives. I mean, at one point it was, like I said, high school kids, to try to help them,
Yes.
Grow as people, through the vehicle of sport. There's just so much, so many lessons to learn about life and, character development and, teamwork and togetherness and problem solving, things like that,
Yes.
That we all learn through any sport, not just basketball. And then having a chance to be a Division I, college basketball coach for a 4-year stretch of my career.
Yes.
It became an opportunity to try to, help some of those players that had a chance to go to the next level and, try to make it to the NBA, achieve their dreams. And so you're still involved at that level of trying to help people grow as human beings, and impact, their lives in the same
Yes.
ways as you would have high school athletes, But then you had a chance, in some cases with some of the players to really try to help them pursue the dream of becoming a professional basketball player, especially in the NBA. So that was fun. And then, I'm now in my 28th year overall being in the NBA, and it's really cool because you work with a lot of different age groups in the NBA. We've got 19-year-old, we've got three, well, they're probably all 20 now. We've got 3 20-year-old rookies on our team right now. We've got 4 games left in our season. We're not going to be in the playoffs. And we've been starting 3 20-year-old rookies for the last 6 weeks. So they just got off of a college campus, and 2 years ago they were, obviously high school players. So they're at that point of their life and their career. And, and then our oldest player on the team right now is, I think, 31 or 32. So we've got, people that are, have wives and kids, and obviously we have rookies, and,
Yes.
There's some players that are 40 years old playing in the NBA. So people are at different points in their careers in terms of, what their objectives are, what their goals are, what they want and need in their lives. And it's pretty cool to intersect with players wherever they are in their career at a given point and try to help them really just achieve their dreams and get for their life what they want.
Yes.
If it's that next contract, or if it's to go from being, someone that's not in a playing rotation to making it into the rotation, or if you're in the rotation and you want to become a starter or whatever it might be, just, helping be a participant for any of those guys to, again, accomplish their goals and their dreams for their lives and their families and what have you.
I love that. Well, and it's interesting. I have a lot of questions floating around my head right now. And so, first of all, when you look at like the different levels, is there a big difference? Because there's this pressure to win, right? At, I think, every level. But as you look back at like high school, collegiate, and an NBA, how would you rate like that pressure? Does it ramp up considerably? Is it very similar? Like, how do you look at that? And then secondarily, how do you handle that pressure from a coaching perspective and just make sure you stay focused as a coach, and then as a staff, you stay focused as well?
Yeah, it's complex. Every level that you're coaching at has different dynamics, different elements. Obviously, there's high school jobs where there's not a lot of pressure. You're probably not, your job security as a high school coach doesn't necessarily depend on how much you'll win or lose at all times in all places. So there's a lot of, it can be really subjective, but
yes,
you can have obviously high school jobs where they really want and expect you to win, consistently. That can be a driving force. You can have, the pressures of how parents behave, in the high school setting, so those things can be there. College, obviously, same deal. It can be really subjective.
Mm-hmm.
If you're coaching at the University of Colorado, it might be different than, if you're coaching at somewhere else, a smaller junior college somewhere, for example. So it just really depends on what the philosophy of an administration or your leadership in the NBA might, it's going to be your owner of your team, things of that sort. Depending on where your program is at a given point in time. But when the pressures come, and they for sure do, especially at this level, and they were real, obviously I was coaching in high level Division I college basketball. They're there. You have to, you can't ignore them. You can't deny them. You really just have to embrace that because it's just part of the environment.
Yes.
And you can also look at it as a good thing because, you're a competitor and you want to win worse than the people around you want to win, whether that pressure comes from the media or whether that pressure comes from, management or ownership. No one wants to win more than you do as a coach, as a competitor. So you can understand that. And at the same time, you hope that wherever you are, that expectations are at least aligned in some degree of reality. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, you have to just breathe. You have to just stay in the moment, and you go to work every day and do the best job that you can and take it one day at a time. And, the results end up wherever they may, but you just have to, like I said, stay in the moment and just coach a day at a time.
Love it. Well, and I think that's an important thing, like staying in the moment and focused and all those sorts of things. How do you, from like a coaching staff perspective, how have you seen that kind of evolve as far as you holding each other accountable, like kind of stay grounded, talk through the pressure, breathe through the pressure? Just how have you seen like either really successful coaching staffs do it well, or other staffs, like, I won't say succumb to the pressure, but just, I don't know, maybe it gets a little more hectic or tough environment? What have you seen from that over your NBA career?
Well, it obviously, emotions can be volatile at times, and you accept that because we're human beings and we all react to again, not only our competitive natures, but also just the emotions of a day to day, or each moment you're in. So you're human, and if you're feeling pressure, there's going to be behaviors at times from any of us that just reflect that you're under the gun a little bit. And in the end, the most important thing, successful coaching staffs and organizations are going to stay together, through the ups and downs. There's always going to be highs and lows, and when the hard times come, you have to stay together. Poor coaching staffs or organizations will splinter in those times, just like a bad team will. If you're a team of players that starts to point fingers at each other, or make excuses when you're having a hard time in the middle of a game, or maybe you're having a hard stretch and you've lost a few games in a row, you're going to ultimately have the ultimate failure. But the groups of people that find ways to just stay together through the good and the bad, and keep working toward the same objectives, and just stay loyal to each other and aligned, to the ultimate mission. At the end of the day, no matter what the score of the game is, when the clock expires, or at the end of the season, no matter where you landed with your record, you're a successful group.
Yes. No, I love that mindset. Well, and when you look at, I'm so curious because you've seen every level, right? And you've been part of multiple teams. I mean, going through your background, just in the NBA, the Pistons, Pacers, Spurs, Magic, the Bucks winning a championship in 2021, now with the Jazz, things like that. I'm always curious because you've seen a lot of players come through. As a coach, I'm very curious, when you're assessing players, right, to draft them or to trade for them, what are you looking for? Like, what's the, and it's a tough question, right? Because it depends on position, probably things like that. But what are you looking for as far as like the tangibles versus the intangibles? Is there an ideal type of athlete you're looking for, like NBA player, or what do you look for? How do you guys assess that?
Yeah, it's a great question, Matt. Those values can be different from place to place. But I can answer the question in terms of my personal thought process, mixed with the organizations that I've been a part of that have the most common denominators of having done it well. Of course, it's a blend of of the physical and the other intangibles that you're talking about. No doubt about it, you have to have enough talent in the league that I work in, on some level.
Yes.
And you have to have enough for the physical, attributes to have a chance to be here. But assuming that those things are all in place, like they are for anyone we're here, it's like, what starts to separate you? There's undoubtedly a skill level involved. In NBA basketball, how good are you at any of the key, skills of dribble, pass, and shoot? There's those kind of things that kind of go without saying. But when it really comes down to it, we want to know things. And again, when I say we, this is going to be the common denominators that I've seen in the most successful organizations I've worked, in my career. We really want to find out who is a competitor. Not everybody is a competitor. There's good basketball players and there's talented basketball players, but there's a lot of guys that actually aren't competitors. And that really matters. Like, who actually really competes, who does winning things, who just contributes to moving the needle of winning. And that's obviously not just a talent or a skill conversation. When I was in San Antonio working with the Spurs for 9 years of my career, obviously the winningest coach of all time is still active, Greg Popovich, obviously already in the Hall of Fame, and a big mantra for Pop and R.C. Buford, the president of the Spurs, general manager, is when we're looking for players to draft, when we're looking for players to trade for, when we're looking for free agent signings in the off seasons, a big piece of it, character was always a number one value in our organization. Like, who is this human being? Do they have strong character, qualities? And another way of saying it was, we were always looking for people that had gotten over themselves. They weren't, just hung up on thinking that they hung the moon, with a giant ego where it was all about them. We wanted to know, has this person gotten over themselves? And we wanted to find people that wanted to become part of something bigger than themselves. They wanted to become a piece, like a spoke in the wheel, where, you could be part of something that achieved something with another group of people that was special, that you couldn't accomplish on your own. And that you already had that understanding that it takes, togetherness, and it takes everybody for you personally to achieve the most special things in life. Nobody can do anything by themselves. So we were always trying to identify those things. And we never wavered from that value system.
I love the answer about both of those answers, the competitiveness first. Sometimes we know, like, there's words we say that we're like, okay, yeah, I know I'm competing, things like that. I don't know if there's one player you can get in your mind right now and you're like, that person was a competitor. How did he, in this case, approach practice, the games, the weights, nutrition? I don't know. How did he approach things where you're like, that we could tell right away that was a competitor? Like, if you're painting a picture for like a coach or a player right now, like, what does that look like in motion, if you will?
Well, I was lucky, I've been lucky in my career in a lot of places to be exposed to some just elite competitors. And again, for having such a long chunk of my career being in San Antonio with the Spurs, the list is pretty long there. But, Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, guys like that, Kawhi Leonard, Patty Mills, the list goes on of guys that were just supreme competitors. And, to be in a place in Milwaukee with Giannis Antetokounmpo, Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton, Brooke Lopez, these guys that, to answer your question, Matt, it just became about, you're not just competing with the guy across from you when the ball gets thrown up on game night, but you play hard and compete hard in practice, because those are habits. You have to have the right habits. And if you're a competitor, you're competing all the time. You're not picking and choosing. It's not on and off. So you're really going after it every day. You have great practice habits. You're working hard because you know that the practice habits are going to carry forward into the games. And you're competing with yourself too. I mean, even when you're doing all your individual work, you're with the medical staff taking care of your body. You're with the nutrition team trying to eat the right foods. You're working on your game, by yourself. There's a component there that drives toward, I'm competing with me. Like, how great can I become? I want to become the best version of me. If I'm at this level today, can I be better tomorrow? So there's this constant pursuit of trying to maximize yourself. And that's part of being a competitor as well. When it comes to everything, the work in the weight room, the conditioning. Again, I spoke about the diet, the taking care of your body, the recovery between games, working on your game outside of the constructs of just the team practice. There's just so many elements of it. And all of those things point to, where the best competitors check all those boxes because they're in perpetual pursuit of excellence.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Can competitiveness be taught in your mind? or is it innate, like you're born with it?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I've been thinking about that a lot lately, in the job I'm in right now, because again, you're exposed to all sorts of players on your own team. And of course, every night when you're competing against other teams, you're exposed to everybody. So you see all that. And I think that you can teach competitiveness to a degree. You can reveal, what does it look like? You're showing film, you're showing moments, this is what an ultimate competitor looks like. Watch this moment, watch this play, watch this response, things of that sort. So I think somebody can go from, here I am today, and oh yeah, I can do that harder. I can do it more like that instead of this. There are some margins there. But when it really comes down to it, the very best competitors have an instinctual piece to them, where they just, they hate to lose and they're going to go hard. They only know one speed. It's trying to win. It's trying to do everything to the max of their ability. It's trying to do things at a standard of excellence in all ways for as much of the time as possible. And I can think of different guys that I've seen, either that I've coached or I've watched, over the course of their careers. And from the day that they came into the NBA, whether they're drafted as rookies or they show up as a 25-year-old, free agent signing from Europe or something like that.
Yes.
There's certain guys that are just, they come in the door and they've got an attitude, they've got a disposition, they've got a fight, to their spirit at everything, where they just have, the ultimate desire to just compete on every play at everything and just not back down or shy away from the moments. And that's, that's where you get your most special competitors.
Yeah. I think it's fascinating to watch different individuals too, and see work ethics. And to your point, there is some people who are just born with it and they just have that. And I agree, it's that balance, right? There is an art to it where you can teach a little bit of it, but ultimately it's everyone's decision, right, to go to that. When you look at motivating athletes, because a lot of times, when I talk to coaches, I hear about, lack of accountability in certain cases. There's a lack of motivation there. I'm generalizing. This is not true of 100% clearly. It depends individual by individual, team by team. But a lot of times I'm trying to figure out in my business, like, how do I motivate these coaches? How do I motivate these athletes? How do I motivate these business people? All these different things, right? These leaders. What have you seen work well from a coaching perspective, like either steps or tips or tricks or something where you're able to finally understand, like, either like how to motivate the person and actually get them to do something you want them to do, whatever that is? How have you seen that motivational tactic kind of work or not work even?
Yeah, Matt, it's there's some ideas here, but not all these tools are necessarily available to you at all times to pick up. You hope that they are, but for a coach, typically the best one that you have, the best tool that you have to reach for is playing time. Players want to play. They don't want to sit and watch. They don't want to be on the sidelines. And so if you've been able to establish, what your standards are, and you're able to stay true to this is what you're accountable for as a member of this team, as a part of our group. If those things aren't achieved, you just don't play, or you don't play as much as you want to. Some situations that's easier said than done, to pick up that tool, but that's probably one of your, most significant tools that you have, at least, in the business that I work in.
Yes.
The other thing you need is you need your group to have enough balance in terms of, talent and ability and competing and what have you, because if there's too much of a disparity between the members of a team or a group, the talented one that isn't doing things that, the way that you want and expect them to be done, doesn't feel any degree of insecurity in terms of opportunity. Because if you look, to your right or your left, or if you look, behind you, if you don't feel or recognize that there's someone that'll come in and do the job as well or better than you're doing it, that has an impact. So I think there's a piece to how you're building a team and a roster, or if it's not in a sports translation, how is your group assembled? Because there has to be, enough in the environment where there's a healthy respect for another teammate being able to take your spot at a given time and do a better job, in a given moment if you're not interested in doing a great job.
Very true. Do you feel, and this is different, right? Probably at the NBA level versus a high school level, because sometimes it's hard or can be hard and challenging and to hold that standard and to maintain it. Because, you look at the high school level, for example, you might have a parent call, or you might have an athletic director call and be like, well, like now we're getting all these complaints, things like that. College, it's a little bit different. NBA, I imagine it's different as well. Hopefully parents aren't calling at the NBA level. Maybe they are, but how have you seen, like, how have you personally held, I always say set the bar, hold the bar, right? How have you found success in like holding the bar, like setting the bar and holding it where others waver? And every situation is slightly different, right? But how do you look at that, and whether for yourself or other coaches you've come across who are like really good at that, like how, because I guess it's challenging for coaches to hold that bar and just say, this is the line and I'm not willing to waver from it.
Yeah, it can be complicated. There's a lot of, challenges, and there can be some perils to it. But at the end of the day, you have to have a value system that you're committed to. And you can't stand alone like that. I'm obviously not the head coach of this team that I work with now, but if there's a value system, you have to be committed, throughout your organization. It starts with, on my level, what is your owner value? And then, so because it runs from the top down. And so you have to be together and have those reinforcements, because in the business I work in, you're going to get, challenged. It can be obviously internally from players on your team in a given moment. It can be externally from player agents, things of that sort. Back to all that, Matt, you have to have alignment with the group, and you have to be committed that this is what we're going to do. And with that being said, the people that you bring through the door, this is what it means to put on a Utah Jazz uniform. This is what it means to be part of our organization. You either want to be part of it or you don't. And if you don't, you're going to become us, and if you don't want to be a part of that, well, at some point we'll find an avenue to, to change that situation when we're able, but in the end, it's everybody get into the same boat, put your oar in the water, row the same direction. This is who we are. This is what we're doing. So there's a lot of, variables to that based on the different levels, high school, college, and pro. But a coach can't be, standing alone and not have, a high school administration, an athletic director, a school principal, whoever it is. There has to be alignment on what does it mean to, to play for this school, or what does it mean to be on this team and wear this uniform? What are the standards that, what are our values that we believe in and that we're going to hold to, without compromise.
Love that answer. Well, and it's so important to set that foundation and think about it, right? Take some time to carve out and figure out what is the value system, what are the important things, and it's like set the expectations, show them the expectations, and then I always say, then when it goes awry, which it probably will at some point, then all I do is pull out the piece of paper and be like, yeah, remember we talked about this? Yeah, this is not going to work. So it's so interesting. Let me switch real quick, talk about the mental side of the game a little bit, because obviously in what we do with high school, collegiate, pro athletes, like I'm out every day talking about the mental side and how important it is, and that mental toughness or mental resiliency or mental strength, however you want to say it. When we're talking from an MBA perspective, and this goes a little bit into the competitiveness, things like that, but how much does the mental side play a role versus the physical side, the just pure talent as you get to the top level?
Yeah, to me, Matt, it's larger than life. It's the single most separating factor between between players. A good player and a great player. A good player and someone that's just not making it or can't get to the next step. Somebody that a player you can play in the regular season and one that you can't play in the playoffs. A player that you can play in, the second or the third quarter, but you can't play him at the end of the game, things like that. And so it's a huge deal. And, so much of it is really begins with confidence. How do you have your confidence? And you'd be surprised. I mean, you're at the top of the world in this league in, professional sports, and guys are making, tens and hundreds of millions of dollars these days. And even the greatest players that are household names that that you see as all-stars, or the guys that have the commercials, you'd be surprised how many times guys like that can even have their confidence, waver in given moments. So it is a real factor for any player. And I think that, helping guys to figure out the pathways they have to growing and gaining confidence and feeling good about themselves and growing, gaining belief in themselves. It's a huge deal. That's not all that goes into, to mental toughness, of course, but you'd be surprised how important, just the confidence piece alone is. And what are you doing to gain that and to build that? And as a coach, how can you help players protect and preserve it if they've got it, or grow it, things like that. So yes. It's a big deal.
Well, and what have you guys done in the past to help build some of that? Because that's when I walk in, I say, I agree. Confidence, I believe, is the core of everything, right? It's any part of life, I personally believe, and I agree with you 100% on that. When a player is struggling with that, and you can see it, and I think most coaches, you can see it, right? You can't necessarily put your finger on it, but you're like, something's off. I know, and it probably stems from confidence. But how have you helped that player to regain that from a coaching perspective? What have you seen work?
Yeah, there's a lot of tactics, I guess, that can be used, and there's sometimes just some instinct that goes into that as a coach in terms of trying to help a player. But sometimes it can be as basic as just the spoken word, just showing a player love, boosting them up and telling them, how you feel about them, that you love them, that you believe in them, what you see in them. Sometimes it's as basic as that, just putting an arm around somebody and telling them, you're okay, man, things like that. And I believe in who you are and what you're capable of. So those are the kinds of things. Sometimes, coaches will put players into situations. You might, draw a play. You might play a player in a stretch of a game that maybe they're not used to being in, as an actual act that goes beyond words of saying, no, you're good. We're good. Like, you're out there and you're out there for a reason. We're going to go rock with you, things like that. So sometimes there's acts like that. Sometimes you have a player's, struggling in a stretch of time. Sometimes it may be going back to the film and helping a player recognize, maybe something that's slipped, that's really tangible, that they can modify and get back on track. Sometimes, and this is another way that, I've used myself a lot over the years. Sometimes I'm going to be going back to the film and literally just gathering a reel of of all the successful moments, a highlight tape, if you will.
Yes.
Like, yeah, this is you. You know, you're a stud. Like, look at you rocking out here. You know what I mean? And that visual imagery, I've seen that work with great power for a lot of guys over the years. If they're having a dark stretch, you know, sometimes a dark stretch is a week or two. Sometimes a dark stretch is the wrong moment in a playoff series, you know, but to be able to turn back and be like, oh yeah, that's me. Like, yeah, that's pretty cool. Oh yeah. You know, and you start realizing that, you know, you're pretty damn good. And sometimes it takes, you know, when you're in a dark cloud, just looking back at something like that and to get that feel good, and kind of get some swagger back a little bit.
Yes.
And, you know, that's just another tool. There's a lot of ways, like I said, it's really subjective. There's a lot of nuance to it. There can be a lot of instinct, but those are, sometimes, you know, those are some of the things that you can reach for.
Ah, great answer. Great answer. I love that perspective. Well, and I want to be aware of your time here as well. Can I throw 2 questions at you? 2.
I'm good.
So the first one, 2021, you win the championship with the Bucks. What was different about that team that allowed them to get to that championship level? What was different in your mind? Coaching staff, players, everything in between.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that you know, any team that wins a championship, I don't care what level it's at, there's you know, you have to have breaks along the way. Luck has to go your way. And not just, you know, once. You know, there's lots of different moments along the journey, where things have to just break for you the right way. So that's true of anybody. And in our run in Milwaukee in 2021, we certainly had our share, because you don't get to the top of the mountain without it. But as far as like the controllables, again, it comes down to togetherness, and it comes down to just, you know, competitive greatness. You have to have enough competitors that that just rise to the moment and can endure, you know, the highs and lows. I mean, to ride through, you know, in the NBA, you got to get through, you know, 4 playoff series, you know, to get to the top of the mountain. Obviously, you know, Denver, the Nuggets are the freshest team that have done it, and it's grueling and it's long, and there's a ton of emotion to it. It's mentally exhausting. You know, the highs and lows between a win and a loss, you know, from one game to the next, are, you know, are powerful. But in order to get through it, you know, you have to stay together, again, in all the good times and the bad times, whether it's in a tight moment in a game, or you're playing poorly in the second quarter, or you get off to a bad start and you're down 20. What are you going to do? Just cave? Or are you just going to keep playing and keep chipping and try to turn it into something in the last, you know, 2 minutes of the night?
Yes.
So there's competitive greatness, and there's toughness, there's togetherness, there's resilience, there's resolve. And, you know, you have to have enough of that fiber in your personal DNA to contribute to the group, but collectively as a group, that has to be, you know, how you're built.
Yes.
And if you're not together, you don't win a championship. You can't get there if you're not together. Yep. And a lot of great teams that have a lot of talent, you know, it's not always the most talented team that wins every year. It's not always the team with the very best player. It's the team that's the best team. It's the team that is the most together, and is able to stay together for what turns into being 2 additional months. You know, the playoff season alone is a 2-month run to get to the top of the mountain. So for teams like the Jazz, where we're going to be done by this time next week, our season will be over. No playoffs for us. You know, unlike the Denver Nuggets, for example, who we play tonight, you know, they have another potential 2 months in front of them if they're going to get to the mountaintop. So that's a long road, and it's a long time to continue to stay together. Yes. And that ultimately ends up being the quest.
It's so good. One last question. You know, this is a very open-ended one, Chad. But if you were sitting in front of a room of, let's say high school collegiate coaches right now, and you got to have that one bit of advice to, just get the most out of your players and things like that. You may have touched on it already, but, really to kind of build a successful team to get most out of their players. What's one piece of advice? I know that's a loaded question there, but one piece of advice you'd give those coaches to help accomplish that.
Yeah, I think coaching with love is a big theme for me. You got to coach with love, and that can be tough love. Tough love is part of love. It doesn't always just mean that it's fuzzy and warm at all times. But if you're coaching with love, for your players and your group, people feel that, and it has to be authentic. And again, like I said, you can't be afraid of tough love either. But letting your players know that not only that you love them as a coach, but that you expect them to love each other, show love to each other as teammates. And, and that it's reciprocal, there's respect in that environment. Respect is a two-way street, and love has to go both ways. And I think it's just a big theme in terms of how do you make your players know that they are loved. And you can't just coach them hard in the gym and then just go home. What are your other avenues where you get to your team, you get to your players? Do you put your arm around them? Do you talk to them on the side? Do you take them to get ice cream or have them over for dinner? Do you bring them into the office and show them something one-on-one? Are there ways that you can just show the human side of you outside of just the guy that has the whistle in his mouth, that's demanding that things are executed the right way, or that the effort is at a premium at all times? Because if you're able to help your players realize that there's authentic love there, and you find the ways to express that and engage with them outside of the lines, your effect as a coach when you step onto the floor can be greater, and your ability to coach them harder and demand more on the floor can be greater. So that would be a theme that I would cling to.
Beautiful. I absolutely love it. Well, Chad, if you have a minute, we'll stay on afterwards, but I just want to say thank you for taking the time. This is so helpful for me. I hope helpful for the coaches listening. I know it will be. And just can't thank you enough for the time today, especially before you do your kind of walk with a coach and you get mentally prepared for the game that's coming later tonight.
That's right. It's my pleasure, Matt. Thanks for having me. I'm glad we got to spend time together, and I hope, whichever audience this reaches, that it has some value for somebody out there listening.
Awesome. I appreciate you, Chad.
All right. Thanks, Matt.